"You're not executive material," she said, swirling her mimosa like it was holy water. "My ex-boyfriend? He's just better than you. In bed, in business, in every damn way." I didn't blink. I poured her another drink, smiled like a psycho, slid my resignation letter across the marble countertop and said, "Good, then you won't miss me." That was the last time Claire Monroe, my wife and my CEO, laughed at me. The next morning, she stormed into HR in 6-inch Louboutins, screaming, "Why is my husband's divorce attorney sitting in your office?" Boom. Now rewind. You want to know how we got here? How I went from "I do" to "I'm done"? Then listen closely, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. This is a story about a man waking the hell up. About the lies she told, the masks she wore, and the night I realized the woman I married didn't exist. Let me take you back to the cracks before the collapse. The lipstick on the wine glass that wasn't mine, the mysterious late meetings, the change in her laugh. You know the laugh. The one she saves for someone who isn't you. This isn't just my story. This could be your story. And it all starts with one sentence I'll never forget. "You're not executive material." People always imagine betrayal as some dramatic moment, like you walk into a room and catch them in the act. But that's not how it happened. Not with Claire. No, with her, it was death by 1,000 little cuts. The first cut? Her laugh. Claire used to laugh with her whole chest. Big, unfiltered, belly-shaking laughs that made strangers smile. But one night, about 2 months ago, I heard her giggle in the living room while she was on her phone. And it hit me. I hadn't heard that laugh in months. Not around me. Not even once. It was new, flirty, full of warmth, but it wasn't mine anymore. I stood in the hallway, just out of sight, listening. Her voice dropped to that soft, low pitch she used to whisper to me in bed. Then she said, "Stop, you're so bad," followed by another giggle and the sound of wine being poured. When I walked in, she nearly jumped. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. She didn't miss a beat. "Madison, from marketing. She's losing her mind over her breakup." Madison, right? Only, Claire had told me earlier that Madison was on a wellness retreat with no cell reception. I didn't call her out. Not then. But something twisted inside me. You know that instinct? That cold burn behind your ribs that tells you everything is about to change? That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the edge of the bed while she snored peacefully beside me. Like a woman with no guilt, no secrets, no reason to lie. I started noticing everything after that. The second cut came a few days later. A hotel receipt in our shared email folder, one she clearly forgot to archive. The room was for 2 people, reserved under her name, during a time she claimed to be at a networking dinner. Networking, my ass. The third cut? A pair of men's cufflinks under the passenger seat of her Range Rover. I asked about them. She rolled her eyes and said, "Probably one of the interns. I gave him a ride last week." "Which one? Why do you always question me, Jack?" she snapped. "You're so insecure." It was a deflection masterclass. Like I was the problem for noticing her lies. Still, I doubted myself. I thought maybe I'm being paranoid. Maybe I'm making this up because I feel small next to her success. You tell yourself that when you love someone, you rewrite reality to avoid pain. Then came the night that killed the doubt. Claire was asleep, or so I thought. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't going to look. I swear I wasn't. But something told me to. Like my body moved before my brain gave permission. It was a message. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You looked unreal in that robe. When can I taste you again?" There was no name, just a number. But the robe? That wasn't a guess. It was the exact silk one she wore 2 nights ago. The one she claimed she wore to relax alone. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My heartbeat sounded like war drums. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Claire, my wife, the woman I built my life around, the woman I turned down promotions to support, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was not just cheating. She was doing it casually, confidently, without fear of being caught. like she believed I was too weak or too blind to see it. And maybe I had been, but not anymore. That night, I slept in the guest room for the first time. And for the first time in years, I didn't kiss her goodnight. I waited 3 days. Not because I was afraid, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because I wanted to be sure I wouldn't scream. I didn't want this to turn into a cliché shouting match with broken glass and slammed doors. No, I wanted control. I wanted her to feel how calm I was while she burned everything down. It was Friday night. We were supposed to go to some investor mixer. She'd been planning it for weeks. Instead, I waited for her in the living room with 2 glasses of wine, her favorite candles lit, music low, romantic, comfortable. She walked in around 7:30, heels clicking like war drums on hardwood, holding a bouquet of white orchids someone had clearly handed her. Not me. She didn't even look surprised to see me. "Wow," she said, setting the flowers down. "You're home early. No Xbox with the boys tonight." I ignored the jab. "I thought we could talk." She froze, just for a second, then smiled like a politician. "Talk? About what, babe?" I picked up my phone from the coffee table and tapped the screen. Her face went pale when she saw it, the screenshots, the messages, the hotel receipts, the call logs. Everything. "I know," I said, my voice flat. She didn't say a word at first. Her eyes flicked from the phone to me, calculating. Then she gave this dry little chuckle. "Jesus, Jack. Snooping through my stuff now? How pathetic are you?" "Answer me," I said, calm, like steel. "How long?" She tossed her purse on the couch and leaned against the counter like she wasn't caught red-handed. 6 months, give or take," she said casually. "But let's be real, it was over before that. You just didn't want to admit it. Over." That word slammed into me like a truck. No hesitation, no guilt, just ice. "You cheated, Claire. You lied to my face every day. How can you say it was over?" "Because it was," she snapped. "I was tired of pretending, tired of babysitting your ego, tired of coming home to a man who stopped trying to be anything more than safe." There it was, the real Claire, not the one who smiled for pictures or gave polished speeches at board meetings. This was the version only I ever got to see, when the makeup came off and the claws came out. "I gave up promotions to support you," I said, voice rising. "I worked night shifts just so we could get this house. I sat in the front row at your keynote even when I had the flu. And you throw me away because I'm not. What? A hedge fund shark? Your high school quarterback ex." She smirked. "Funny you mention him." I blinked. "No, no way." She leaned in, voice sweet as venom. "He's the one from the messages. You always hated him, didn't you? Turns out your instincts were finally right about something. That was the knife." And she twisted it with joy. I should have yelled. I should have cursed her out, smashed a glass, done something dramatic. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, watching the woman I married morph into a stranger right in front of me. "You're a FNG coward," I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "And you're not executive material, Jack. Maybe you never were." Silence. Just the soft hum of the playlist behind us. God, I still remember the song. Some indie track she used to love. Now it felt like a joke. I turned away, heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribcage would snap. "I'm done," I said. "You'll get papers next week." She snorted. "You really think anyone will take your side? In this house? In my company?" I smiled. "You'll find out. People think the worst part of betrayal is the moment you find out. That sharp stab in the chest when the truth comes out. But no, that's not the worst part. The worst part is what comes after. The quiet, the emptiness, the days that follow where everything looks the same, but nothing feels real. It's like standing in the ruins of your house, breathing in the smoke, and realizing you have no idea where to start. After Claire and I had that final confrontation, I didn't sleep. I walked through the city at 2 a.m., past dark storefronts and trash-stained curbs, with no destination in mind. Just walking, moving. If I stopped moving, I felt like I'd collapse under the weight of it all. How do you process the fact that the person you shared your life with, who saw you at your most vulnerable, who held your hand through your father's funeral, who whispered dreams into your ear at night, was lying to you with a smile. It's like mourning a ghost that's still alive. I remember sitting on a bench in the freezing dark with nothing but my phone, and the image of that last smirk on her face burned into my brain. I opened our wedding photos, swiped through them like a stranger. She looked so happy in those pictures. So did I. God, I almost hated that guy, the man who trusted her, who thought love was enough. That man was a joke. I stared at our vows. She promised forever, promised faith, promised that no matter what happened, we'd fight for each other. But she didn't fight. She replaced me. And worse, she enjoyed doing it. There was this moment, maybe 2 days after the confrontation, where I stood in the kitchen holding one of her coffee mugs. It still smelled like her perfume. I froze, mug in hand, because for a split second I wanted her to come in and explain everything away. I wanted her to say it was all a test, a bad dream, that she never meant any of it, that she still loved me. And then I hated myself for wanting that, because I knew the truth. She didn't love me. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. You don't hurt people you love that way. I started thinking back, long before the cheating. There were signs. Moments I brushed off because I didn't want to see her for what she was. The backhanded comments. The way she always looked over my shoulder at parties. The condescension in her voice when I talked about my work. I chalked it up to stress, pressure, the CEO life. But the truth is, she looked down on me for a long time, and I was too blind to notice. The anger faded. It didn't burn forever like I expected. What replaced it was a cold, hollow sort of grief. Not explosive, not loud, just this quiet ache behind my ribs every time I heard her voice in my head. Every time I walked past a memory we made. Every time I saw a couple laughing on the street and felt like I was watching a movie I'd never be in again. I stopped checking her social media, stopped reading old texts. I unfollowed her accounts, blocked her number. Felt like pulling glass out of my skin. But the bleeding started to stop. I kept hearing her words, "You're not executive material." It used to cut. Now, it sounded like a spell that broke. Like her voice had been holding me hostage for years, and I was finally free to think for myself. It didn't feel like closure. It didn't feel like healing. It just felt quiet. And sometimes, that's the best you can ask for, that I didn't wake up one morning and suddenly decide to divorce Claire. It wasn't like that. There wasn't one dramatic moment that made everything fall into place. No movie-style epiphany. It was slower, like thawing ice, like standing at the edge of a bridge, staring into the fog, wondering if there's anything worth saving on the other side. For days, I kept wondering, what if I'm overreacting? What if I'm giving up too fast? What if she's right and I was just boring? That voice in my head, the insecure one she spent years feeding, it got louder before it died. I started making a list. I didn't even realize I was doing it at first. Just small things in my notes app. Gaslighting during fights. Mocking me in front of her friends. Lying about being out of town when she was in a hotel 2 miles away. Calling me safe, like it was a curse word. Eventually, the list had 47 entries. That's when I realized I wasn't deciding whether to leave a marriage. I was deciding whether to keep being the only one holding it up. Claire didn't fight for us. She didn't even flinch when I said I was done. She just shrugged and went on with her power lunches and investor cocktails. She replaced me with her ex like he'd just been sitting on the bench, warming up. So I called my lawyer. I filed for divorce. Quietly, precisely. No dramatic Instagram posts, no shouting matches. Just clean paperwork, frozen assets, and a pre-planned HR bombshell that would rattle her perfect little kingdom. I'd given her loyalty. She gave me a spreadsheet of betrayal. So I matched her energy, but with silence, with control, with dignity. And that, it turns out, was worse than yelling. The moment she found out, she called me 6 times in a row. Left voicemails. Switched from rage to charm to guilt, back to rage. She even texted, "Can't we just talk this through like adults? I made a mistake, okay?" But it wasn't a mistake. It was a series of decisions. Cold, conscious ones. You don't mistakenly book hotel rooms and text someone, "When can I taste you again?" You don't accidentally humiliate your husband in the kitchen while sipping mimosas. She had her chance to talk. Now I had mine. I walked into the HR meeting 2 days later like a man with nothing left to lose, because honestly, I didn't. I had already lost her. I had already lost the illusion of our marriage. What I had now was the truth, and truth can be a brutal, beautiful weapon. Her face when she saw my divorce attorney sitting across from her was priceless. Not shocked, not sorry, offended, like I had broken her rules by not begging to stay. And that's when I knew I made the right decision. I wasn't crossing that bridge again. I was burning it behind me. I packed my things the following week. Left the house key on the counter. Didn't even leave a note. I didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said had been done, by her actions, by mine, by the silence between us. People think the hardest part of a breakup is the moment you walk out. It's not. The hardest part is finally realizing that walking out doesn't hurt anymore. The first thing I noticed after moving out was the silence. Not the kind that makes you lonely. The kind that makes you realize how much noise you were drowning in. No passive-aggressive sighs from across the kitchen. No helpful critiques about how I fold laundry like a college student. No sarcastic jabs during Netflix nights disguised as banter. Just quiet. I slept better in that small Airbnb than I had in years. Not because the mattress was good, it was terrible, but because for the first time in forever I wasn't sharing a bed with someone who resented me. Claire didn't reach out again after the HR ambush. Not directly, at least, but she made moves, subtle, controlling ones. I got a notice from our joint bank that a business account I had access to was suddenly under review. She tried freezing the luxury card we both used. Her lawyer sent a list of demands that looked like she thought she was divorcing a billionaire. It wasn't personal anymore. It was war. But I didn't flinch. I hired a forensic accountant. Got a new lawyer who specialized in high-conflict divorces. I even pulled every Slack message, email thread, and financial trail I could legally access from the company. And believe me, there was a lot to find. Turned out, Claire had gotten sloppy. Her ex, the one she so graciously told me was better than me, was funneling his consulting invoices through dummy LLCs. She was greenlighting payments. And some of those executive trips? Straight-up fraud. It wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. It was corporate misconduct. My lawyer smiled when I handed over the file. "You know," he said, "you're going to come out of this not just divorced, but clean, respected, and probably a lot richer than she ever planned." But it wasn't about money. Not for me. It was about dignity, about identity, about reclaiming all the pieces of myself I gave up trying to keep Claire happy. I started therapy. Just once a week, nothing dramatic. My therapist, Marcus, didn't tell me what to feel. He just asked questions that dug under my skin. "Did you love her?" he asked once. "Or did you love the version of yourself you hoped she'd eventually see?" That one hit hard. Because maybe I'd been trying to prove something my whole marriage. That I was worthy. That I could grow into the man she claimed she needed. That if I just worked harder, supported her louder, gave more of myself, she'd finally say you're enough. But she never did. And the truth is, she never would've. Because people like Claire don't want equals. They want mirrors that reflect their perfection. And I stopped doing that. The fallout wasn't all pain, though. There were moments, strange, unexpected ones, where I felt light. Like ordering takeout without worrying about judgment. Like watching trashy TV in my boxers and not being called lazy. Like catching myself in the mirror and realizing I was standing taller. Breathing deeper. I was still grieving, of course. You don't just wipe away a decade like dust off a shelf. But I wasn't drowning anymore. I was learning how to swim in a different ocean. One morning, I woke up, checked my phone, and there was nothing from her. No legal threats. No manipulative texts. No updates. Just peace. And that's when it hit me. The fallout isn't just about what you lose. It's about what you finally stop carrying. It had been 3 months. 3 months since the HR ambush. 3 months since I moved out. 3 months of silence from Claire. And then, Like a ghost rising through smoke. She texted me. Let's meet. One last time. I owe you that. I stared at the screen for 5 minutes. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I wasn't scared, angry, or even curious. Just still. I didn't reply right away. I took a walk, sat in a coffee shop, watched two teenagers argue over which cookie to share like the world depended on it. And somewhere in that quiet, I realized something. I didn't need to meet her. I was past that. But I was also ready. So I said yes. We met in a rooftop bar downtown. One of those sterile places with perfect lighting and $19 cocktails. Of course, she picked it. Claire never did anything halfway. She was already seated when I arrived, wearing a navy blazer over a silk blouse. Like this was just another business pitch. I sat down across from her. No hug, no smile. Just two people with a history too heavy for small talk. She looked at me for a long time before speaking. You look different, she said finally. More solid, like someone lit a fire under you. Guess betrayal builds muscle, I replied, sipping my drink. She smirked, but there was no bite in it. Just fatigue, maybe regret, maybe not. I'm not here to win you back, she said. Don't worry. I wasn't. She flinched. Barely, but I saw it. Claire took a deep breath and looked out over the skyline. I was cruel to you, she said. Not just the affair. Everything. I know that. I don't expect you to forgive me. I didn't respond. Not yet. She turned back to me, eyes glassy but dry. I kept thinking if I admitted I was wrong, it would fix something. But it won't. I know that now. I didn't come here for an apology, I said. Then why did you come? I paused, thought about it. The truth was strange and simple. Because I needed to look at you one last time and feel nothing. She inhaled sharply. That one hit her, harder than anything I could have screamed months ago. And it was true. I felt nothing. No hatred, no fire, no ache, just clarity. You know, she said, swirling her glass. He left. The ex. I raised an eyebrow. Of course he did. She laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. He said I was too cold. That I used him to feel powerful. Well, I said, finishing my drink. At least he caught on quicker than I did. Silence again. Then she asked it, the question I somehow knew was coming. Did you ever really love me? I didn't answer right away, because it wasn't a simple yes or no. I had loved the idea of her, the ambition, the drive, the danger. I had loved what we could have been. But Claire, as she really was? I think I loved trying to earn you, I said. But that's not love. That's addiction. She looked down. For once, no defense. No sarcasm. Just a woman finally seeing herself without the crown. I hope you find peace, she whispered. I already did. I stood up, left a 20 on the table, walked away, and as the elevator doors closed behind me, I felt it. Not victory, not revenge. Freedom. They say time heals everything. It doesn't. Time just gives you distance. What you do with that distance, that's what matters. 6 months after I walked out of our house, I was standing in a quiet bookstore downtown. The kind with creaky floors, jazz playing low, and a cat that thinks it owns the place. I picked up a book I'd once meant to read during our honeymoon. Claire had laughed at me then, said it was too slow, too boring. Typical Jack stuff, she called it. But there I was reading the opening line and realizing that for the first time in a long time I didn't feel like someone's sidekick. I felt like a person again, not a placeholder, not an accessory to someone else's ambition. Me. I think about Claire sometimes, not with anger, not even sadness, just as a chapter, one I read too many times, hoping the ending would change. But it never did. The villain didn't turn around. The princess didn't come back. And the hero? Well, he finally walked away. I spent years trying to be enough for her. I bent, shrank, twisted myself into shapes to fit her world. I let her decide who I was allowed to be. I thought if I gave more, loved harder, waited longer, she'd see me. She never did. But you know what I realized? That's not my failure. That's hers. Because I was never weak. I was just kind. I was never boring. I was steady. I was never beneath her. I was beside her. She just couldn't stand not being the center. That's what I want anyone listening to this to understand. If someone makes you feel small for loving them, leave. If someone calls you safe like it's an insult, walk. And if someone cheats, lies, and laughs in your face while holding a mimosa in one hand and your heart in the other, run. Because the moment I stopped waiting for her approval, everything changed. I started my own business. Nothing flashy, just something that's mine. I built a client list, hired people who believed in the work. People who don't roll their eyes when I talk. People who listen. I reconnected with old friends. Friends Claire called too average. Friends who showed up with pizza and silence when I didn't know how to speak. I even started dating again. Slowly, cautiously. But this time, I'm not auditioning for someone else's fantasy. I show up as I am. If that's not enough, I leave the table. The truth? Claire did me a favor. She burned everything down, yes. But from the ashes, I found something better than the life I had with her. I found myself. So no, time didn't heal me. I healed me by looking hard at the pain, by not running from it, by understanding that heartbreak isn't weakness. It's proof you tried. You opened up. You gave your all. That takes strength. So if you're where I was, standing in the ruins, doubting your worth, thinking you'll never be okay again, I promise you this, you will. You'll breathe again. You'll sleep without tears again. And one day, without warning, you'll laugh, really laugh, and realize you didn't lose her. She lost you, and that is the ending she never saw coming.